Welcome into the Gridiron Grind. It's our weekly college football podcast. Creta 3, Jimmy G. Jimmy, what's happening, buddy?
Not much, man. Excited for another week of football. Excited to do another week of the show. I like this week a lot.
Do you? I found this one kind of tricky, but we'll see. I mean, there's some intriguing games. I think it has the potential. Now, the slate of games last week was just phenomenal. Yeah. You know, the number of games, the Ohio State Notre Dame game, that lived up to the hype. I mean, that was a heck of a game. Florida State Clemson was a heck of a game. The Oregon State Washington State might have been the most underrated game of the day. 38-35 Washington State win. Just a heck of a day to watch college football. It really stunk if you were like at something like a wedding or something with no service, might I add.
Or, in our area up here in North Texas, there were storms in Oklahoma, roughly, 5, 6, 12 hours away. But our local news stations, both of them, decided they were going to take over all the local channels. So unless you had one of the streaming services like Peacock or whatever, you couldn't watch the end of the Texas-Baylor game. You could not.
Well, that one might have been over early second quarter.
Yeah, what Texas did to Baylor, Art Briles would have tried to cover up. We're just going to put it that way. You could not watch Ohio State Notre Dame, and you could not watch Penn State Iowa, another one that was over pretty early. But they just wanted to constantly do this coverage of storms, not even in our area. So a lot of football fans pretty upset.
That's the worst when they do that.
It is. It's terrible. Like, it's not even close. I mean, they were north of Atoka, which is over an hour away, and it wasn't like they were headed directly south down 69-75. They were going southeast.
It's just the coverage area, like CBS in our area. CBS they're doing a lot of Southern Oklahoma, which is a couple hours away, like you said. Some of the places.
It's like we can't get the Dallas stations, some legalese. Well, we're stuck with Oklahoma. But in Oklahoma,
see,
if I'm Oklahoma, I don't care what's going on in Texas. I don't live there.
Here's what's crazy. So we lived in Bonham. In Bonham, you get the Dallas stations.
Lucky.
And when we moved to Sherman, somehow, some way, the guy said he didn't know how it was working out this way when we moved and set it up a couple years ago. We still get Dallas stations.
Fortunately, you should charge people come over and watch the news.
Yeah. And maybe that's because, it just carried over from our original account. But
maybe. But, yeah, so that was, like you said, a great weekend of football unless you were at a wedding or
no service. So all the talk last week of what I was going to do didn't matter one iota because it was a beautiful place. It was at a beautiful setting, beautiful wedding. But, yeah, it was in a metal building in the middle of the woods, East Texas, beautiful trees. Like I said, beautiful setting for a wedding. The problem was it was one of the most first-ranked games since 2014. And there was no signal in that building. So I did get to watch 11 o'clock games, and I got to watch the first half, the 2:30 games. So, but from halftime at 2:30 games and all the night games, I didn't get to watch any football. And it was
terrible.
It felt weird. I'm used to it. Father of 3. I got stuff on Saturdays all the time. But usually that's only an hour or two of my day, and I can work around that. There was no working around that last week, Jimmy. I had the Texas Baylor game DVR'd my recordings, and I could watch it on my iPad from my DirecTV app. And I started that about 11 o'clock. So it was rough. It was a great day of games, and I think this week's got some potential. Let's get into
Yeah, this is like 2.0 kind of deal. Some of these games we got this week's kind of 2.0. I do want I wore a free Creta shirt.
Free Creta, I like that. We're gonna hashtag free Creta.
Yeah.
We got some ranked. How many? We got 4 ranked versus ranked matchups this week. I mean, that's a solid slate. You start with number 10 Utah at number 19 Oregon State on Friday night. It's going to be a heck of a Friday night game. Utah barely.
I think even though they're not ranked, I think some of these games, like we're about to list
Florida
off,
Kentucky is going to be a heck of a game.
Yeah,
vastly
exactly.
underrated is the Kentucky Wildcats.
Mm-hmm. And Oregon State too. Oregon State, man, Utah better be careful.
I know Oregon State had the number 11th ranked defense in the country going into last week. Washington State's quarterback Cam Ward, what a performance! Yeah. He lived up to the hype. Washington State's the real deal. That Pac-12 is so loaded, just so loaded. But Oregon State's favored by 3.5 at home. Still don't know if Cam Rising is going to start. Utah was favored by UCLA by a touchdown, and then Saturday morning it leaked Cam Rising were going to play last week, and it got, I think, all the way down to 3. Utah ended up winning by a touchdown. Their defense is legit. Oregon State's defense legit. That's going to be a heck of a game Friday night. Utah they've won the Pac-12 2 years in a row, and somehow, some way, still undefeated with backup quarterback who has been iffy. He's had some moments and he's had some bad moments.
Yeah, leaning on that defense, and I guess, we talk about it some in the Cowboys side of it. I rub my eyes because I'm just frustrated mentioning the Cowboys, but lowest scoring game in the Pac-12, and I can't remember how long they said, 14-7 win over UCLA. As the Utah fan, you're going, man, I'd really like to see us be more dynamic on offense to match our defense. Coaches would too, I'm sure, but then you're like, hey, we won, right? Yeah. It's kind of like lean on that defense. Let's don't turn the ball over like we talk about. It's kind of easier said than done, right? Don't turn the ball over, put the defense in bad positions, and that's what this backup QB's done. And like you said, he's looked a little iffy. It's bent but not broken. So we'll see. He's going to get a test with, like you said, with Oregon State's defense on Friday.
Then we start to look at Saturday games. Number 22 Florida, off their big win against Tennessee 2 weeks ago. They go to Kentucky. Kentucky undefeated. Haven't played anybody that big. They did roll Vanderbilt last week, like I predicted here on the show. Kentucky favored by 1, opened at 3, and it quickly got to 1. A lot of money on Florida. I think we both have plays in this game. This is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Florida is catching some rhythm, but I think Kentucky is pretty good.
Kentucky, yes, Florida, like you said, is catching some rhythm. Kentucky's already on a roll, and it's in Lexington. And this is another one of those games like we talked about, even though it's not ranked versus ranked, I think this is going to be a good game as well. And then, even in the next one, Georgia-Auburn, I think we all know how this one's going to play out, but it's Auburn, conference game, you kind of never know. So I'll be peeking in. I'm going to watch Florida, Kentucky, but I'm going to keep peeking in on the Georgia game. Georgia gave up 21 to UAB.
Yes.
Although it was, they were up 40-something, I think 49-21 ended up being the final, but still, 21 on UAB, I'm going, okay, Auburn with SEC players, this could be, wouldn't surprise me if Auburn keeps it close for a little while.
Have you seen the drive chart from Auburn last week against A&M? I didn't realize how bad their passing game was. And I know A&M's got a good defense. A&M does have good defense. But they gave up how many yards to Tyler Van Dyke in Miami? It was like 400-something passing yards. Auburn squeaked out like 56 passing yards against A&M. I did not realize their quarterback situation was that bad. And Hugh Freeze,
man, he is.
So I don't know. Let me ask you something. Georgia has not been that impressive. They were losing at halftime to South Carolina, came back, shut them out in the second half, won that game by 10. Was not impressive against a bad UAB team. Like you said, give up 21 points to UAB. I think, myself included, giving Georgia the benefit of the doubt, they are the 2-time defending champs, but they have a lot of new pieces. They haven't really found a good rhythm. They haven't been nothing to me says dominant. How long do they get to stay at number 1 based off what they did last year? Because their schedule is weak, so they don't really face a tough challenge for a while. But how long do they get to stay number 1 just because of the last 2 years?
I think until they lose.
Really?
And they remind me of some of those Alabama teams where They don't necessarily have to look impressive on offense because their defense is taking care of stuff. And then, once the other team, they're just kind of Auburn or Alabama's just kind of beating on them, beating on them, beating on them. And then once they break, it's just the gates open, kind of like what you saw them do to Ole Miss. They just kept on and kept on and kept on. And as soon as they broke open, it was over. And then, Alabama was back. That's what Georgia kind of reminds me of, is like, yeah, it's a bad year in the SEC for quarterbacks. I mean, when AJ Jefferson, and, I'm a hog, he's my guy. When that's arguably the best quarterback in the SEC, it's probably a down year for quarterbacks. So, like you said, Alabama, Georgia trying to find their rhythm. And Georgia just kind of, like I said, reminds me of those Alabama teams where they're not real impressive on offense. Defense carries a lot of the weight. Offense does just enough because they're Georgia. They've got enough athletes, playmakers at the right positions that once the levee breaks, it's, they end up blowing a team out. And you're like, man, it was a lot closer on the field than it seemed on the scoreboard.
Yeah, so we'll see. Same goes for the next game we're going to talk about. Michigan. Number 2, Michigan at Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Nebraska opened at 18.5. It's quickly down to 17. Nebraska at home. Nebraska's not any good, but I don't know how good Michigan is either. They haven't looked overly impressive against a bad teams. Now, Rutgers, they did beat Rutgers by 24. That was close, and then they pulled away a little bit in the fourth quarter, but they were favored by 24. So they finished right on the number. I'm not sure, but that's also kind of what Michigan does as well. We won't learn a lot about Michigan unless they slip up until November. November, they play Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. So both Georgia and Michigan, they might be number 1, number 2, just because of what they've done the last couple of years. But we're not going to find out. They're not going to get a true test until November, because I don't think, even though this is Michigan's first road game, I don't think Nebraska's got enough to really challenge Michigan.
I agree, and I kind of think Michigan, same analysis I just gave Georgia. I think right now they're just, you've got a defense. Of course, Harbaugh is just now getting back, so we don't know how much that played into it. But it's like they're not really dynamic on offense. Like last year, the running game was really taking off, and it just, I kind of think of Michigan the same way. Is like you said, they were close with Rutgers, and all of a sudden, boom, they blew it open, and that's, like I said, kind of the same analysis. And yeah, it's Nebraska at home, Matt Rule, but he just doesn't have the players to keep up with Michigan. Wouldn't surprise me again if it's the same old close game. And Nebraska, Matt Rule got a few tricks up his sleeve, and then all of a sudden, boom. Next thing you know, you look up and it's 38-10 Michigan.
I can definitely see it. Number 24, Kansas at number 3, Texas. Texas, 17-point favorite. A lot of people like this as trendy Kansas, like you got to take the points. And when you look at it on paper, you could definitely say, well, you got to take Kansas here. Kansas always plays Texas inside the number. Of course, usually because Texas is favored by a big number. Kansas in the last 10 years have actually beat them twice. Once in Austin last time they played there in 2021 in Sarkisian's first year. But both these teams are completely different than they were in 2021. Neither team made a bowl. No joke. And both teams now, arguably the best two of the top 3 teams. Oklahoma's right there too. So Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, I think are 3 teams ahead above everybody else in the Big 12. I mean, you got Daniels. They're also like a top 15 running team. They're averaging 5.5, almost 6 yards a carry. Daniels is very efficient throwing the football. He's a heck of a quarterback. I still think he might be the best quarterback in the Big 12, although when Quinn Ewers is locked in, he's as efficient as they come. I mean, he throws a great ball, but it's when he's locked in. What do you think? To me, when people break this down, they're only looking at the fact that of Kansas's stud athletes, which they do have stud athletes. They're forgetting the fact that they haven't even come close to playing a defensive line like Texas. And I don't want to sound like a homer here, but a lot of national pundits are saying it. And from what I see, I agree. I think it's the best defensive line and maybe front 7 in the country. That's how impressive I think this defensive front is for Texas. And I have serious questions of whether Kansas can do anything in the run game against Texas.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think that's what separates it. I think both offenses are dynamic, and they've shown that. And like you said, Daniels and Ewers, two of the best quarterbacks on two of the three teams in the Big 12. But I think Texas's defense is elite, and I think that's where it gets separated. And you may not see Daniels do a whole lot through the air, but you may see him do more on the ground. And I think he's going to have to keep Kansas in this game. He's going to have to convert some third downs with his legs to try and wear Texas's defense out if he wants the Jayhawks in it. I don't know if Texas covers. I think if they're able to shut down Daniels, I think Texas covers that. I don't even think it's close, because
I see this game playing out very similar to Alabama game with Texas.
Yeah.
The difference is Kansas has a better offense than Alabama did, but Alabama has a better defense than Kansas does.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe Daniels is a better quarterback than Milroe. He's more of a scramble to pass, and Milroe scramble to use his legs. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the main difference is going to be up front. And, here's something. Texas hasn't even scored 40 points yet in a game. They've scored in the 30s all 4 games. They've won by double digits every game. The defense has just been in shutdown mode. They gave up they would have held Alabama to 17. They gave it that late touchdown that didn't really matter. They were up double digits already. I could see Texas starting to get in a rhythm on offense. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas gets in the 40s for the first time. So that I think it has the potential to be a really good game because I'm really high on Kansas. Number 13, LSU at number 20, Ole Miss. Ole Miss getting 2.5 points at home. This is a big game for both these teams. Ole Miss already lost to Alabama. Of course, LSU still's got to play Alabama. Ole Miss is fighting for a chance because they need Alabama to drop 2, so they can't lose anymore. LSU, same situation. They need to win this one and beat Alabama to make it to Atlanta. This is a big game for these two teams.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too much into it. I've got this one in my JG's Big 3 this week. But yeah, I think you're right. LSU gets lucky. They squeaked one out against us last week, and Ole Miss, wheels fell off. Like we said, Bama just kept going. And then once it broke open, Ole Miss leads them 7-6 at half, and then only musters 3 points in the second half. So, then Alabama pulls away. So yeah, this is an important game for both teams. LSU's got to keep it going, and Ole Miss has got to bounce back.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. That might be the game of the day, or this next one could be the game of the day. I'm really interested to see how number 11 Notre Dame responds after that close loss to Ohio State at the last second. They travel to Duke, number 17 Duke, undefeated still. Duke getting 5.5 points. I mean, where's Notre Dame at mentally? Duke plays extremely hard. And, did you see where Notre Dame, the last 2 plays of the game, only had 10 defensive players on the field?
That's exactly what I was about to say. Mentally, they can't get much worse short of having 9 players on the field this time. The most 2 important plays of the game, and you only have 10 people out there. That's from coaching all the way down to the players. Trey, if I'm supposed to be out there and I'm standing on the sideline, at what point does it click, go, oh crap, I'm supposed to be out there? Maybe the guy realized it was just like, oh, I'm not going out now.
Yeah.
Like, it was a defensive now.
A defensive end. And they're lucky Ohio State didn't recognize it the first time. They threw it and ran away from it. And then I don't know if they recognized it or not. They did run right at where there wasn't a defensive end. And I don't know if he stopped him because it was from the 1 or 2 yard line, but
right,
you definitely ain't stopping him if you don't have the defensive end.
Turns out it's 11 on 11 for a reason, man. And
really disappointed in Notre Dame because I really thought Notre Dame was going to win that game.
Yep.
I had it in coffee with Creta. You had it Jimmy G's Big 3. I really thought Notre Dame, and I might have to admit Ohio State might be a little bit better than I thought. I knew they were going to be good, but I thought Michigan was going to be head and shoulders above them again for the 3rd year in a row. I do not know if that's true. I think the
running game for Ohio State is what really impressed me.
Yeah, Henderson, he's good.
Notre Dame. Yeah, they were able to move the ball on the ground really effectively, and I was really hoping that maybe he got in after time expired because in college they don't make you kick that extra point. The pros they do.
Right.
I was really hoping because I said, "Oh, that's 2. Notre Dame plus 3. Let's go."
Yeah.
They said 1 second on the clock. I went, "Well, that's a push."
Yep. Yeah, that hurt us. That hurt us.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of pushes last week. So it's, I mean, could be a good day of games. It's college football on the TV. Nothing better than that. Let's get to our next segment, questions of the week. Get your questions in. You can email us or us at gridirongrindsports.com. Hit us up via Twitter, Instagram. If you got our number, just text us. Love answering your questions. And 2 games we hadn't talked about. It's because of our 2 questions that are coming up. First question's for Jimmy. It's from Terry from Texarkana, Arkansas, via Twitter. And he says, "Hey, Jimmy, Arkansas had a stinker at home 2 weeks ago against BYU. Then last week, massively improved, almost beat LSU at their place. What do you think of the Razorbacks so far this season, and do they beat Texas A&M on Saturday?"
You know, I think what we're seeing is a lot of what we're seeing with the Dallas Cowboys. We lose Kendall Briles, offensive coordinator, and we bring back Dan Enos, familiar face. I know it kind of felt like a desperation, like a last minute, oh crap, we got to get somebody in. Hey, we were pretty good with Dan Enos. Let's bring that back. And like I said, a lot of what we're seeing with the Cowboys, because Dak doesn't look like himself, and neither does KJ. KJ last year to this year is a vastly different quarterback. He kind of reminds me of Brandon Allen and Austin Allen that we had under Enos. Not dynamic, not putting up 40 something points a game, and barely putting up 30 points a game, but it's definitely a different offense, and that's what I think it's hard to adjust to. Of course, there's a lot of expectations come into this year because we had seemingly one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the SEC returning. And so then here we are losing to BYU and kept it close against LSU. And they got lucky. Our offensive line played terrible, and we mismanaged our timeouts in the second half because, we had no timeouts to stop them and try to get into field goal range. We have an All-American kicker. But I don't know. I think they are who, they are. I think what they look like is exactly who they are this season, sadly. As far as A&M goes, Petrino might try to hang 100 on us. I mean, it's first game at A&M. We beat him last year at Missouri State. He's at A&M now, and he's got a lot better weapons than he did at Missouri State. And Missouri State was up on us 17-0 at one point. So I think Hogs are going to have their work cut out for them again. Wegman's not starting. Max Johnson is. We beat Max Johnson when he was at LSU. He probably had one of the worst, if not the worst, play I've ever seen on a college football field.
Yes.
Running the opposite way and just throwing it behind him.
Yes.
D lineman. So that's hopeful. But A&M's defense and A&M's skill players have the potential to give Hogs fits. So I don't know if they can beat. I think they can if we can get to Max Johnson. If we can make Max Johnson beat us. If it's got to go other way, then I think it could be a long day for the Hogs.
I think it all depends on the quarterback play for Alabama or for Texas A&M. Webman's pretty good, and Max Johnson actually came in and he played the majority of that game because I think Webman went out in the middle of the second or beginning of the second, and Johnson had a solid game, threw a couple touchdowns. His weapons. A&M's got some really good receivers. Evan Stewart, I think, is really good.
Evan Stewart, Muhammad.
Yeah.
Nice Smith.
Nice Smith. The tight end, I think, is it Green? Tight end. He's really good. But I think it comes down. It depends on how comfortable Max Johnson is. Like you said, we've seen him. I mean, he's been around 4 or 5 years now. You put pressure on him, you make him uncomfortable, he will make bad decisions. Yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then A&M's defense is pretty good. So it's going to have to – Arkansas is going to have to play good defense to give themselves a chance on offense to have good opportunities and take advantage. I wouldn't be surprised if I had to pick it right now. I'd say it's probably right at the number. I mean, it's going to be probably if you're going to give me make me choose, I don't know, A&M 31, Arkansas 24. But like I said, A&M plays a little bit, or Arkansas plays a little bit better defense, forces a turnover. I mean, it could get inside that number and possibly Arkansas could win the game.
I like it. Rocket Sanders is supposed to play, so that'll give us a little bit of more firepower
Yes.
on offense, but
Because
we
like
got to
we've
get to
talked
the
about,
quarterback.
Enos is a lot better coordinator and play caller when he can run the football.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Great question, Terry. Hunter from Munster, Texas, via Twitter says, boys, Colorado's Cinderella season came to an abrupt halt last week, being taken to the woodshed by Oregon. Do they bounce back this week versus USC, or is this the last we hear about them for a while? And USC favored another 3-touchdown favorite, this time 21.5 favorite over Colorado. Trey, what do you think?
No, I do
Colorado
not
bounce
think.
back, or is Colorado going out to pasture?
Yeah, I think they're going out to the pasture. I don't think they bounce back. And here's why. And this isn't a knock, it's just reality. I'm a fan of Dion and what he's doing. I just think it's kind of also what I think with the 4 new teams in the Big 12. They're going up a level in competition. You're going up to a Power 5 conference. You can see what happened with Colorado beat TCU week 1. They had all summer to prepare for them, all fall. They weren't beat up. That was as healthy as they were going to be. If they played TCU this week, TCU would be favored again by 2 to 3 touchdowns like they were, and I think the outcome would be different. So you got a lot of guys transferred into Colorado from smaller schools, the depth it was obvious last week. Colorado does not have the depth along the line of scrimmage, nor do they have the talent that is necessary in a Power 5 conference week in and week out. And when you go from playing a team like Oregon, playing a team like USC, 2 of the best teams in the country, 2 top 10 teams, that's tough. And I just don't think. I think Coach Prime long term, he's going to do good things. He's a great coach. People love him. I know he brings a lot off the field stuff as far as the hoopla and the expectations and the excitement, which I think is great for Colorado and great for college football. But I just think this year, and he kind of said it after the Oregon game, he's like, "I'd take receipts. You better get me this year because this is as bad as we're going to be." And I agree with him. And not saying that they're bad. I just think they can bounce back and make a bowl, even though they play in such a tough conference. I just think this is a bad matchup going from Oregon to USC. They do get them in Colorado, but I think USC's got a lot to prove because they didn't look great against Arizona State. That game was a lot closer than people thought, and a lot closer than USC wanted it to be. So I could see another beating from USC on Colorado, and then I think that hype on Colorado comes down a little bit as they continue Pac-12 play.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Trey. They don't have the depth yet to compete at this level. They've got, not that these players are bad, they're just worn down, man. They don't have the depth. You can't cycle in guys over and over like these other Power 5 schools can. And I think Coach Prime's right. Get him this year because he's not. This would be the worst they ever are. And like you said, I love what he brings too. He brings some swagger, man. He brings some confidence to a team that had only won 2 games in the last 2 years, 1 game each of the last 2 years. And he's got the skins on the wall to back it up. He's not just a guy who, I played in the league. He's like, I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm considered the greatest cornerback to ever play the game, two-sport athlete. And he's like, I got the skins on the wall to prove it. And I think he can do great things at Colorado. He just might be a year. I think success-wise, he's already exceeded expectations. Now we're coming back down to reality. So, Colorado will definitely be a team to watch while he's there.
Yeah, I agree moving forward. So there's a games to watch, and thanks for the questions of the week. Again, you can get to us, gridirongrindsports.com, or hit us up on any of our social media pages or comment on the YouTube video, and we'll get your questions. So keep bringing those in. It's time to get to our last segment, our bets of the week. Last week was a frustrating week. We were right there on several games, a couple bad bounces. I was 2-2, Jimmy 2-3. Both of us just under 500 on the season. Try to get this thing turned around. But both of us had winning records. On Jimmy G's Big Three. Again, that comes out on Wednesdays at gridirongrindsports.com. And then I was so you were, I believe, 2-0 because you tied the Notre Dame game, and then I was 3-1-1 because I tied Notre Dame as well. So both, and with Coffee with Creta, which comes out Saturday morning. So get over there. We have those additional picks for you to read about it and do our write-ups on them as well. I think you got 4 this week. I only got 3, so I'll let you get started with your first one.
Yeah, I've got several. I got several. First one kicking off on Thursday. Jacksonville State, Sam Houston State. Give me Jacksonville State -6.5. They're averaging almost 30 a game. Sam Houston State, this is their first they're now a Power Five school,
Right.
FBS. Well, I say Power Five, excuse me, they're an FBS school. They've had a lot of success at the FCS level. I expect them to put up, a score or two, help this to help it out. But yeah, give me Jacksonville State is just going to be too much. I think they win Jacksonville State -6.5.
Yeah, and Jacksonville State looked good last week, shutting out Eastern Michigan, so they can play some ball.
Mm-hmm.
My first one, I got four for you, all of them on Saturday. First one's Kentucky -1 at home against Florida. I think it's going to be a great game.
Like it.
But Kentucky's at home. They're playing hard. They're undefeated. They got a new quarterback to transfer from NC State and Devin Leary, and he's been playing great football, over 1,000 yards already this season, 9 touchdowns. He has had some turnovers, going to need him to take care of the football. But Kentucky at home, getting 1 point, basically a pick 'em. I'll take the Wildcats and Coach Stoops to come away with a victory.
I like it. My next one is 2 in the same game. Georgia State versus Troy. Over 50.5 and Georgia State -1.5. Georgia State is a really good football team. They're putting up 40 themselves a game. Troy's putting up almost 30. Okay, well, that covers our over. I think Georgia State covers that 1.5 points and gets close to the over on themselves. So that's Georgia State -1.5 and over 50.5. And I left off a bet, sorry, in my Jacksonville, Sam Houston State, over 36.5. Jacksonville State and Sam Houston State. Like I said, I expect Sam Houston to be able to score once, maybe twice, and that'll just help the over. So 2 games, 2 bets apiece, back to back. I told you I like this week. I think there's some money to be made.
And that's only 36.5.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yep.
It's not a lot of points in college football.
Nope.
I
think
5
thinking
touchdowns and a
Houston
field goal.
won't be able to do much. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my second one is 12:30 game. We just mentioned how bad Eastern Michigan looked against Jacksonville State last week. Eastern Michigan didn't score. They scored 6 against Minnesota, and they scored 19. I mean, they've 3 of their 4 games, they hadn't even got to 20 points. Central Michigan, they haven't been explosive on offense either. Both teams play very slow-paced football. The over-under is 48. I like the under. Slow-paced teams, 2 offenses that are stuck in the mud. Give me Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan at 12:30 Saturday, under 48.
I like it. I like it. Another game. 2 bets in the same game. Florida and Kentucky. Over 44 and Kentucky -1. Kentucky's at home, which is why I went with them. I think they're undefeated. I think they're a good football team. Florida's turned things around after losing to Utah. Big win against Tennessee, like you noted. Kentucky's got the momentum coming off that big drumming of Vanderbilt, which you called. And I think they keep the momentum rolling. And I think they win this game. And I think that 44 is going to be a little too low for Lexington this weekend. So over 44 and Kentucky -1.
Like them both. Love them both. My next one's my bet of the week. I really love this one. It's Memphis -3 against Boise State, 3 p.m. Saturday kick. Memphis quarterback Seth Hennigan, he's one of the best passers in the nation. He had one of the highest passer ratings according to Pro Football Focus last year. He had 6 turnovers last week against Missouri. Did not play good, but that's not who he is. Traditionally, he's a very good passer, takes care of the football, throws a lot of touchdowns, throws for a lot of yards, leads that offense. So I expect for him to come back, have a bounce-back game. And even though with those 6 turnovers, it was a close game with Missouri, I gave the over hit. So I think he bounces back. Boise State is one of the worst teams in the country at getting to the quarterback. And a lot of those turnovers last week from Hennigan because he was getting pressured so much by Missouri. Boise State ranks 119th in pass rush and 116th in sack percentage. The Bronco defense also allowing 8 yards per play, which ranks 132nd of 133 teams. I think this is a mismatch. I don't understand why it was only 3. It was -1. People have bet it. It's moved up to -3. I still like Memphis to at least win by a touchdown. Big fan of this bet right here. I kind of bet all my bets the same, but I don't recommend because you never know. We think we know, but we don't know. You listen to anybody says the same amount and just try to have a winning record. That's how you stay out of trouble in this game.
Yeah.
So, although I don't recommend it, I do love this one. Memphis -3 hosting Boise State on Saturday.
I like it. And I like it. I've got two more. Texas State, Southern Miss. Texas State -5.5. Took the Bobcat season win total at over 4.5 wins.
Great
And
bet.
I need this one. Yeah, the big Baylor win was good. Southern Miss is not good. They're terrible. Like we said, Texas State beat Baylor. Then they slipped up against UTSA. But after that, the last two wins Texas State's had, they've won by a combined 112-58. So I think they get this one easily and put me one win away from cashing that bet. So Texas State -5.5.
What's your last one?
Virginia, Boston College over 54.5. Both teams are pretty bad in this one, Trey. Boston College 1-3. Virginia's 0-4. You don't get a record like that by outscoring your opponents. I was hoping the spread be a little bit closer. I would have took BC, but I think both teams will give up enough points for the over to hit. Boston College has given up 142 so far this year.
Oof.
Virginia has given up 151. So neither of these teams play defense, which means offenses should be able to move the ball and get some scores. So I think over 54.5 is looking pretty good.
I like it. Yeah, both teams are very bad. Not good.
Yeah.
My last one, Coastal Carolina +7 at Georgia Southern. I think it's a bit of an overreaction. Last week, Coastal Carolina had a dud on Thursday night. Georgia Southern pounded Ball State. Georgia Southern favored by 7, but I think Coastal Carolina is better than what they showed last week. Georgia Southern, they don't really finish drives. They're only getting 3 points a drive inside opponent's 40-yard line. They're not finishing drive, but Coastal Carolina ranks first in stopping teams inside their 40, holding them to field goals. So I think that's going to allow Coastal Carolina to keep it close. All right, so to recap our bets, Jimmy has Thursday night. He's got Jacksonville State -6.5. He's also got in the same game Jacksonville State and Sam Houston over 36.5. Saturday, Jimmy's got Kentucky -1, Kentucky, Florida over 44, Virginia and Boston College over 54.5. Two bad football teams, not going to play much defense. Georgia State -1.5. Also, Georgia State and Troy over 50.5. And Texas State -5.5. For myself, I'm joining Jimmy. I have Kentucky -1. I have Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan under 48. Memphis -3. Again, I really love that one. I hope I'm not wrong. And Coastal Carolina, I expect them to bounce back +7. So there's our bets for the week. Could be a good week. Again, you got the Petrino Bowl, AT&T Stadium. Arkansas, A&M favored by a touchdown. Are they going to keep playing the game at AT&T Stadium?
I don't know. There hasn't been a definitive answer to that. I know at one point we signed like a 10-year or something contract to play the game there, and then they offset it 2 years. The 2 years that Manziel was there, we did home and home, but I don't know. I mean, I think both teams travel well enough to do it. But if you're a season ticket holder for either school, you're going, man, that's a big game that I get to miss out on every year, because it's not like your season tickets transfer over. So
right.
I could see them moving it eventually, but I think for the near future, I think it's going to be there until they find something else. I mean, they might play that until Jerry goes to that big stadium in the sky.
Yep. I'm really intrigued by that game. That might be because I'm just not sure about either team. That one and LSU-Ole Miss. It's is Arkansas the team that lost to BYU at home, or are they the team that played LSU to a field goal in Baton Rouge at night? Is A&M the team that gave up 400 something yards passing to Miami, or are they the team that held Auburn to 56 yards passing? And they have a backup quarterback, but they're favored by 7, and the line is moving in A&M's favor. And then again, I just think with LSU and Ole Miss, so much is on the line with that game, because we'll see what Arkansas and A&M do. Arkansas already has a conference loss, but if Ole Miss can beat LSU and then LSU can beat Alabama, potential 3-way tie, first in the West, I think there's a lot. Of course, A&M, if they keep getting better, they're going to factor into that. I think Mississippi State is definitely the worst team in the West.
Yeah, I think they're done.
Yeah. 2 weeks in a row, I've had Mississippi State. They got blown out at home to LSU, and then put up a stinker last week against South Carolina. So, and then
I would have liked to have seen what Coach Leach would have been able to do there in Starkville.
I know, because Will Rogers.
I think they would have met what Dan Mullen did, and I think he would have blown it out through the stratosphere. I mean, look what he did at Washington State, and look, that culture's still up there as we talk about them offensively putting up numbers that they hadn't seen since Leaf, and so
the team that doesn't get talked about near enough, and I've only watched them play once, and that was their opener against Boise State, is Washington. Washington is blowing the doors off of people. I mean, they beat Cal by like 30 last week. Yeah. They were favored by 21, I think. I mean, they look good.
Dude, Penix throws such a good deep ball. Yeah. I mean, he's accurate. He got quick release, not a lot of wasted motion. You see, like, a lot of lefties kind of have that weird, maybe it just looks weird because it's, unusual to see a left-handed quarterback. But like Kellen Moore, and there was just a lot of Matt Leinart even seemed like he had like a big windup to let it go, whereas Penix just drops back and just like shoots it out there. So he's quick release, very accurate, hardly makes bad decisions. And Washington, man, I watched some of that game too. That was
really,
So
there's so many good teams in the Pac-12. I mean, that conference is just loaded. It's a shame.
Loaded this year, man.
They're at their peak, and it's not even going to exist next year.
And look at the and it falls, by the way, the quarterbacks.
Yep.
Look at the quarterbacks in the Pac-12. Vernon Heisman Trophy winner, Bo Nix at Auburn, Penix at Washington. I mean, Ugalele at Oregon State playing like Clemson thought he was going to play. I mean, it's a quarterback-heavy league. And they're playing like it. All those teams are competitive and
I think
ranked.
I mean, I think it's every bit as good. Maybe not. There may not be one team as good as when the SEC is at its peak. Mm-hmm. But I think collectively, when people talk about the SEC being the most dominant conference, which they definitely have been over the course of how many years, this year I think it's hands down Pac-12, and I think it's as good collectively as any year the SEC has been. Now they might not have the dominant team like 19 LSU or Georgia last couple of years or 2020 Alabama, but they collectively, man, it's just a bloodbath out there this year.
Yeah,
like Oregon.
I think you're right.
Oof.
And when the SEC was good, all those teams, they all had quarterbacks. They were, had some of the best quarterbacks in the league, or in college football in that league, and so. Yeah, I mean, you see where they all go. They all gone to the Pac-12. Now the Pac-12 is, best conference in football this year. So
talk about that. And Cam Rising hadn't even played yet for Utah. Utah's undefeated, and they don't even have their starting quarterback yet. You add him in the mix, and if he comes back at the level that he's accustomed to playing, that's another thing. All those quarterbacks out there, they're all older. Even like Bo Nix, he's been around forever. And he's had a resurgence the last couple years out there in Oregon. And then this Cam Ward cat for Washington State, his numbers were impressive. I mean, he's the under the radar player of the year for me right now. Guy you've never heard of. Cam Ward, quarterback of Washington State. He puts up electric numbers. And then the Big Ten is just basically what it is every year. It's Michigan, Ohio State. I think Penn State's pretty good this year. And then this a bunch of teams that can't compete with those three teams. Even though Maryland's solid, but I don't think they're as good as Penn State, and I definitely don't think they're on the level as Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah, Maryland might be up there with Ohio State as far as offensive ability in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But defensively, Penn State's pretty good. Penn State's better than I thought they were going to be. They can really challenge Michigan and Ohio State.
Yep.
You're going to have to play mistake-free football to beat the Nittany Lions.
And they get Michigan 2 weeks before the Ohio State game in at Penn State. So Michigan's November is tough. We'll learn a lot.
Yeah.
We'll decide a lot in the Big Ten how good Michigan is at Penn State, Maryland, and then Ohio State. So a lot of good football. This is a great year because I think there's not a dominant team. I haven't seen a dominant, like just a team like, oh, yeah, they're 100% going to at least be in the playoff. I mean, I think there's some teams, like I do think Texas is the best team in the Big 12, and they might make it just because they don't have – we'll see how they look against Kansas. But I just think they're, they might make the playoffs just because they're, it's not many teams that will have even a chance to beat Texas the way they're going, that defense.
Right.
And then Florida State, same way in the ACC. I think that was their best chance to lose. And now I just think they're head and shoulders better than everybody in the ACC. And that makes it tough. This might be the best year to have a 12-team playoff. Going to 12-team playoff next year. This year it's still only 4. But this could be a great year for a 12 because I think you could have 12 teams that could legitimately win the national championship this year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great year. It's already been a great year, and so it's only going to get better as we get down into conference play and we get to see some of these games. Like you said, Michigan, Penn State, we're going to get to see, USC, Oregon. We're going to get to see these games, and even some of these conference championship games are going to be shaping up where if it's the two best teams in the conference, I mean, Pac-12 championship game, those two teams are going to be tested by the time they get there. So
yeah, it will be. And then Big 12, you're going to learn a lot next 2 weeks. You got Texas, Kansas. There's only 3 ranked teams in the Big 12: Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. Texas plays Kansas this week, Oklahoma next week. So you'll find out if everybody's saying how good Texas is. About to find out 2 weeks in a row. How Kansas and Oklahoma stack up against them. And early line is Texas 5.5 over Oklahoma next week. I'm a little surprised by that because every time Oklahoma so far has played an average defense, their offense has only scored 28 against SMU and 20 against Cincinnati.
Right.
So they should take care of business this week. They host Iowa State. I don't think that'll be much of a contest.
Yeah, none of those teams have a defense even close to Texas's. So, Dylan Gabriel better get some sleep.
Yeah. So, Red River next week, Petrino Bowl this week. Thanks for joining us here on the Gridiron Grind College Football Podcast, coming out on Wednesday, YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Check out our Cowboys NFL pod. Will come out on Thursday. We got a lot to talk about. Dallas Cowboys, what direction they're about to go. That was a disaster. If you missed our post-game show, it's up on our YouTube channel. Check that out. And we're going to really dive into the Cowboys next week, or this week on Thursday. They play the Patriots, and then a big one Sunday night game next week against the Niners. Jimmy G's Big 3 off an undefeated week. Check that out. GridironGrindSports.com. It's under the tab Jimmy G's Big 3. And check us out. Subscribe, like, comment, subscribe. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, GridironGrindSports.com. Jimmy, another great week, buddy.
That's right. Let's get it
tomorrow for the Cowboys podcast.
Yep, let's get it. I'm excited. Go Hogs.
Hook 'em horns. We'll see you next week.